Ascension 7, 15, 1, 2, 19, 7, 25, 6, 13, 6, 7, 15, 14, 0.
That was the opening cinematic from Call of Duty Black Ops. So what it depicts is a shortwave broadcast station called a number station, which generally broadcasts streams of numbers, words, letters, tunes, or Morse code. In this case, for Black Ops, it's a series of numbers. And these numbers and these broadcasts are, heard and shown throughout the campaign. And I've long wondered exactly what the messages that are being broadcast are, and if anybody's played the campaign, obviously realizes near the end of the game that these messages are being sent to various operatives in the field. It could be anywhere in the world. In Black Ops' case, it was Alex Mason as well as others that these messages were being sent to. And these shortwave radio transmissions, depending on the power of the originating station, can be broadcast globally. So, you could have people receiving these messages around the world and decoding them. So let's take a look at basic cryptography, which is basically the practice and study of hiding information. So we're going to use a pretty simple example here of hello world, and we're going to translate that into a sequence of numbers. And all we're going to do is take each letter and apply the number as it falls in the alphabet. Where A equals 0, B equals 1, all the way to Z equals 25. So H becomes a 7, E becomes a 4, 11, 11, 14, and then world is 22, 14, 17, 11, 3. Notice there's that space in between 14 and 22. We can close that. Obviously we're dealing with transmitted numbers, so we don't have to really worry about spaces. You'll have to figure that out. People receiving the codes would have to figure out where the spaces lie and separate the words. And also, if it's written down, it makes it a little bit more difficult to translate or to crack the code, because it's pretty easy if you have hello world, I am here. I is a single letter word, and it's pretty easy to start decrypting codes when you start taking a look and make assumptions as to what the one letter and two letter words actually are, because it's only so many 1 and 2 letter words. Alright, so we're going to look at advanced cryptography, and basically advanced cryptography, in this case anyway, we're going to be using an encryption key. In order to code our text hello world, we're going to use where are you, and the number translation is shown there, so it's entirely different from the translation with our basic cryptography example. In order to crack the code, in order to translate the code, you need to take your numbers, so let's start with 3, and subtract the character value for W, which is 22. So 3 minus 22, and when you get negative, you basically roll back over to 25. So we're going to go, 3, 2, 1, 0, 25, 24, 23, 22, and that'll basically bring us to 7, which is the character code, or the alphanumeric whatever code for H, as we saw in the last example. So you can do this for the entire code, and hopefully I got it right because I had to translate it in reverse in order to come up with the code. But you'll see that it's a lot more difficult. Again, without the encryption key, if these messages are continuously transmitted utilizing the same encryption key, then it's going to be a little bit easier to break. But even then, it's going to be super difficult. Without that key, it's going to be very, very difficult to decrypt these numbered transmissions. But again, if you're using the exact same encryption key every single time you transmit, then it just becomes a little more easier to decode. The real challenge to decoding messages is if you're using an entirely new encryption key every single message that's encoded and transmitted. And that's basically what we're going to look at our case in Black Ops. Oh, and just to make note, this type of encryption is actually called a one-time pad. and it's actually proven to be nearly impossible to crack if used correctly. Alright, so we're going to go back to the opening cinematic for Black Ops now, because the cinematic actually gives us a clue as to what's being used for the encryption key. And you gotta watch closely, because I didn't notice it. I mean, you know, again, at the end of the video, I'll talk about credit to the people who actually put all this together. But there's definitely a clue here, and we've actually already run by it. So let's go back and take a look. All right, so let's go back again, and we'll pause it right at the point where it actually gives us this clue. All right, it's coming up, right there. Okay, see that book? See that book? Hold on, gotta zoom in on it. There we go. That book is actually called Profiles in Courage, and it was written supposedly by John F. Kennedy. And it's a 1955 Pulitzer Prize-winning biography describing acts of bravery and integrity by 8 United States senators throughout the Senate's history. So it's actually within this book that lies our encryption keys, and the encryption keys change, as we'll see. So we're going to go back to the Black Ops campaign, and we're going to start taking a look at some of these codes and seeing if we can't, translate or decrypt some of them. Alright, so we're going to go back to the Revelations mission, which is the second last mission in the campaign, and this is sort of the end. We're going to start with, there's actually 3 transmissions in this mission, and we're going to start with the third one here. So we have an Echelon code, Echelon 324, blah blah, all the way to 5. Okay, so how do we use the book Profiles in Courage in order to translate this? Well, let's take a look. Now, oftentimes with these one-time pads, the actual cipher, whatever cipher you need to use, is actually attached to the message. So it's part of the message. So in this case, sort of Echelon 3, and I think Echelon basically is to tell us that, you know, it's part of the book and it starts on page number 3. So if we go back to our book Profiles in Courage, page 3, and look at the beginning text on that page, it reads, Walter Lippmann, after nearly half a century of careful observations, rendered in his recent book a harsh judgment both on the politician and on and on. So that's our encryption key. That's the encryption key we're going to use to decode our message. So just like we did in our advanced cryptography example, we're going to decode it. So the first letter of our cipher is W from Walter, and we're going to be taking that and subtracting that number from the first number of the code. The first number of the code being 24. So 24 minus 22 is going to give us 2, which is which is C. A is 0, B is 1, C is 2. So we're going to do that. We're going to continue through that, and remember, you just have to wrap around. You know, if you have 4 minus 18, you have to go 3, 2, 1, 0, and then 25, 24, and so on. So we're going to translate the whole thing using that encryption key, and here's what we get. All right, so here's our fully decoded message, and let's make that a little bit easier to read for you. So Cuban allies authorized construction of permanent broadcast station Rusalka, Gulf of Mexico, Project Nova initiated, await instructions. Wow. Okay. That's awesome. That is awesome. So we decoded this first message. So let's start taking a look at the other ones, at all the other messages that exist in the game, and the missions, and also on the computer in the interrogation room. So we're going to start on the computer system. This is the computer that's in the interrogation room. You can get up out of the chair and go and use it. We've actually logged in as Jason Hudson, and if you search the internet, you can actually find all these login IDs and passwords. And this is an email from Weaver to Hudson that basically has 3 Echelon codes. So we're going to take a look at those right now. Alright, so let's take a look at the first Echelon code. We're going to use the same process we did last time. Look on page 2 of Profiles in Courage, which reads, millions of readers, not so many. Now, the only problem with this translation was, I don't know, it must have been a typo or whatever, but in order to get the translation correct, an M had to be used in addition to the text, the regular text in the encryption key. And this is what it comes down to. Pentagon 1 Prospero. Now, if you recall, in one of the missions where Hudson and McNamara were taking Mason into the Pentagon. Prospero was the first of 3 clearance codes that McNamara used to gain access to the president's inner sanctum. The other 2 codes that were used were Ariel and Sycorax. So we actually we're going to use that to help us translate the other 2 Echelon codes, because the problem with the other 2 is that they didn't actually follow the previous 2 examples as far as the page numbers were concerned in Profiles in Courage. So, with a little bit of fiddling around and taking a look in the book, it was actually determined that these Echelon codes were decoded not on the proper pages that were listed in the code. So we'll have to take a look at this. We'll take a look at the next 2 right here. Okay, so here's the second Echelon code, and it was actually found on page 19 in Profiles in Courage, and the cipher text was their beliefs, others. Again, the nice thing about the Echelon codes, I mean, even though it's not referencing, these last 2 aren't referencing the actual page number, it's good because Echelon 2, then Echelon 9, and Echelon 8, they sort of follow in order. So the page number for Echelon 2 is going to be before the page number for Echelon 8 and before the page number for Echelon 9. So this Echelon 9 code was actually found on page 19. As I mentioned, and it decodes into Pentagon to Ariel, Ariel being the second code that was used in the Pentagon. Alright, and the final Echelon code from that email was found on, or the cipher was found on page 17, Profiles in Courage, and the text reads, "Today the challenge of political," which then translates into Pentagon 3 Sycorax, which was the 3rd clearance code. And it's just a side note that Ariel, Sycorax, and Prospero are 3 characters from Shakespeare's play The Tempest. I don't know if that means anything, but, just a little trivia, I guess. Alright, so there's another email that was sent to Hudson from this guy, John Trent. Another Echelon code. So let's take a look at this one as well. Okay, so there's the Echelon code, and it was actually found on page 7 of Profiles in Courage. Himself, he's also obligated, which translates into Oswald compromised. Interesting. Alright, so let's take a look at the Ascension codes now. We're done with basically done with the Echelon codes. This is another email sent from Weaver to Hudson. So let's take a look at this one. Okay, so here's the Ascension code, and at the end of the video, I'm going to reference who needs to be given credit for all this, because this one is just crazy. Okay, so there's no real clue, like the page number reference that we had with the Echelon codes do not exist for this Ascension code. So this person that I will mention at the end of the video and give credit to all this basically looked at this and looked at the email timestamp and the general timeline of the game, which led him to believe that Ground Zero referred to the Kennedy assassination, especially considering that last code that we decrypted, which was Oswald compromised. So this guy basically tried to reverse engineer the method of code cracking by taking what we figured, or he figured, would be in the hidden message and attempting to find out what key would result in that. So sort of assumed that the key was still in JFK's Profiles in Courage in the same book, and it had to be some sort of alphabetical key that was readable. So, the details of the Kennedy assassination was Texas School Book Depository. So he used that, which was a very important part of the assassination, and basically shifted the phrase through these numbers and attempted to decrypt it with starting let's say Texas School Book Depository starting at 7, which is the first number in the Ascension code, and just trying to come out with something that sort of made sense that would be part of the book. So if we started on 7 and decrypted it or encrypted it, and it didn't make sense, then he'd shift to 15 as the first character, then 1, then 2, and so on. Basically, This guy did this until he came up with this partial phrase, and so it went. It was a Pluto CR. So this guy basically scoured the entire book to find that part of the phrase, and here's where it was, and it was actually found on page 113, which really isn't referenced in the Ascension code. So we're going to use that cipher to decipher our code, and this is what it ends up being. Location: Texas School Book Depository, 6th floor. 6.5 millimeter Carcano rifle, Dallas Dealey Plaza, 11/22. These are the details of the Kennedy assassination. So, it's the assumption that Alex Mason was the shooter since Oswald was compromised. And the final video of the campaign actually broadcasts these numbers while Mason mumbles the words 6.5 millimeter, November 22nd, and Texas. So it's quite interesting and quite a process to decode that Ascension code, definitely. All right, so let's go back to the Revelations mission, and we're going to find another Ascension code here just after he's looking at these view screens with Reznov. And so here it is, and we're going to try and decode this one right now. All right, so there's the code. Trial and error was used, basically, around the pages where the last Ascension key was found, and the answer for this one was actually on page 101. And it also had a typo in it with the C, but the translation was prepared down target. Kennedy, John Fitzgerald, priority supersedes all previous instruction. It looks like this Ascension code was keyed, or maybe the other ones as well, keyed starting on the 7th letter on the page from which the key is taken. So, looks like this Ascension code, or Ascension 1, is page 101, starting on the 7th letter, which is the I in derision. Okay, this last Ascension code from Revelations is actually the first one from the mission. We're just going to see it after Mason escapes from the chair here. So there it is, and was found on page 119, similar to the last one, before the next meeting of Congress, not. And that's the ciphertext, and translates into resume directive programming, respawn. So again, the key here started on the 7th letter of the page 119. All right, there's one more code we're going to look at here, and I actually had to turn the voice and music and cinematic volume down in order to be able to hear it properly. So this is actually the numbers mission, and this is where Hudson and Weaver go in and they're interrogating Clark, who basically was part of the team that worked on this Project Nova, the originating Project Nova. So obviously we can't hear them, and we got the subtitles, but we want to hear these numbers being broadcast because they're not listening, or you can't go to the pause menu and actually see these numbers. So, we'll put some glass in his mouth and bash him in the head. And just listen closely for those numbers right here. Alright, so I know that was pretty hard to hear, but these are the numbers, and it actually didn't follow the other Ascension codes properly. This is actually found on page 107. It doesn't actually start with the 7th letter, but the text that was found to fit the code was this honest opinion of the secessionist leader, Houston replied, and it actually has another typo, because this guy had to actually add in an extra C in secessionist in order for the code to work out, and it translates into all points down target Clark, priority 1, await final coordinates. And if you've played through this mission, it appears that this is actually the broadcast that triggers the attack on Hudson, Clark, and Woods during the interrogation. Alright guys, that's it, and we got to give proper credit where it's due, because the guy who put all of this together deserves a big thank you and congratulations, and man, you're a freaking genius. This all started a few days ago. I was actually searching around because I always wondered if the code, from the opening cinematic fit in with the mission or even with zombies, with the Ascension maps. It's sort of all linked together. So I was searching for deciphering tools, how to decipher numbered codes, and the one-time pad really made it impossible because you need that key, you need that cipher key. And this guy who actually came up with this, came up with the book and saw the book on the table of the broadcast room, and came up with all the deciphering keys and basically deciphered all these messages. So it's really amazing. The guy that's referenced, who actually did this, is Steam user The Cold Hunter. So that is apparently his Steam user ID. All this information, where I found it, was compiled basically on a blog site, and I'm going to link you to it. It's Big Daw's Cage, and this guy runs a blog related to Call of Duty, and the link is in the description. I'm also going to post a link in the video right there. But if you want to click on the link to go check it out, the link is in the description. And, big thanks to these guys. Like this, the Cold Hunter is basically the guy that put it all together. And Big Daw, I don't know where he got, the information. Maybe it was posted on a forum, on the Steam forum or something. But, I've asked Big Daw. I was actually in contact with him and just mentioned to him I wanted to do a video, if I could reference the information on his page. And also if he can get me in touch with the Cold Hunter. He mentioned he was going to try. I haven't heard back as far as getting in touch with the Cold Hunter, the Cold Thunder. But Big Daw was kind enough to say, yeah, man, by all means, just post a video, give proper credit. And obviously I'm going to give proper credit because none of this was us, all right? We're just showing it. We're just putting it into video format, again, just because, I started looking into this a few days ago and wanted to really do something about it and post something for you guys. So hope you guys enjoyed that. It's pretty intense, actually, pretty interesting, and a lot of stuff that Treyarch has put into this, like as far as Easter eggs. It's kind of interesting. So leave your comments. What do you think about all this? And I know there's probably one or two more codes elsewhere in the game. I know there is one for a fact in an email. If you guys want to try and decrypt those ones as well, by all means. I'm sure you guys in the United States have pretty wide access to that book by JFK. Anyways, that's it for NextGenTactics.com. I'm SpiderBite, and I'm out. Hey guys, we're on Facebook. Check the description of this video for the link to our new Facebook application. Subscribe and get our latest video updates posted right on the wall on your own Facebook page.